balancing it. Hey there, it's Louie. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to crochet a birthday hat. We're going to be learning how to make it little itty bitty, full size like this, as well as how to customize it with stripes, stars, pom-poms, stuff like that. Okay, well, this video is especially exciting because it marks our 4th birthday for Club Crochet. 4 years of making patterns, tutorials, doing live streams, building a community. So from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody that has been here this whole time. And this birthday is especially exciting because it actually is the first time that I've ever been able to crochet full time. If you've been a fan of this channel for a while, you'll know that while I've been making these videos, managing the website, and all that fun stuff that comes with that, I've also been working a full-time job, which has been understandably pretty difficult. But with the support of everybody purchasing kits, stickers, becoming a Club Crochet member, even just being subscribed and watching these videos, I am finally able to take the plunge and follow my passion, something that I've been wanting to do since high school, which is a while now. I can actually crochet full time. So just from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much to everybody that has helped support this channel in the past, and I'm very, very excited to see what the future holds now that I have the actual time to put into crochet that I've wanted to. So yeah, thank you so much. To celebrate this birthday, we're also doing a big sale. I'll put links in the description, and I'll talk about it more at the end of this video when I talk about how you can help support this channel. But yeah, so look out for that. But yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Thanks for liking these videos, subscribing, being a member, all that fun stuff. Okay, well, without further ado, let's get hooking and talk about all the materials that you're going to need to make this party hat here. Okay, so for this pattern, you're going to need the following materials. Now, as I was saying before, we're going to be learning how to make both the small one and the big one. Now, regardless of which hat you use, I'm going to personally be using the same kind of yarn. I personally really like using worsted weight yarn in 100% cotton. But you can use any kind of yarn you want. Whatever kind of yarn you do use, make sure that you have 2 different colors. You want your main color, that's going to be our red for this video, and your secondary color, which will be our yellow for this video. You'll also need a crochet hook. Just use whatever crochet hook works best for your yarn. Because I'm using worsted weight yarn, 100% cotton, I'll be using a size G 4mm crochet hook for this pattern. But like I said, whatever kind of hook works best for you. You also need a pair of scissors to cut little ends off, and a darning needle to help you sew in the hard to reach spots. So for this video, we're going to be going through the different sections of it. I'm going to be taking it really nice and slow, one step at a time, for our absolute beginners out there. So if you are a little frustrated, I have, with how slowly I'm going, I will put time codes in the description of this video, so you can quickly jump to different parts of the video if you would like to. We're going to start by making a miniature hat and putting the details to that, and I'll be explaining throughout how to make it larger, and then I'll explain even more so how to make it into a bigger hat afterwards, and how to do so without even having stitch markers, but we will be using stitch markers in the main part of this video. Okay, well, I think that's enough exposition. Let's just get rock and rolling and start by making our hat ourselves. We're going to need our main color to start. Okay, so we're going to want to start with a magic loop. Now, if you never made the magic loop before, I do have a video tutorial that could help that I'll put right here. It'll explain 2 different ways that you can make a magic loop if you'd like to make a different method than we're going to be using in this video, but I'll be showing you how to make it really quick as well. My favorite way to make the magic loop is to pinch the yarn in with your middle finger and thumb and go over your index finger and then back down around your middle finger, and then back over like so to cross over to make a little X, and then back down to make 2 parallel lines along the back, like that. Then you want to take this tail end, hold it down between your ring and pinky finger, and close it in like that. That's going to hold it into place. Now with your crochet hook, you want to take your fingers and face it towards you like so. Take your crochet hook, go under the first bar, and hook onto the second bar, and then pull that second bar under the first one, and then make a loop like that. Kind of like go towards you to make a little loop. Then go over that first bar, hook onto the second one. You might need your index finger to help guide the yarn onto the hook. and then take that yarn and hook it through the loop like so. There we go. That's going to create a chain stitch and should lock your yarn in place. We're going to pull it a little tighter. And now you have a loop that when you pull this tail end, it'll close it up like that. Okay, so we're going to start this pattern with round 1, and round 1 is going to be pretty easy. The hardest part of this pattern, I think, is round like 2 and 3, and then after that, it gets big enough where it makes it a lot easier. Before I get going, let's get a stitch marker prepared. I would like to use a stitch marker in this video so we can keep track of where the ends of the rounds are, and I'm going to use a different color, that light blue. Just need a little bit. Okay, so for round 1, we're going to be doing single crochets into this magic loop and then pulling it closed. For a single crochet, we're going to go into the center of this magic loop, like so. Then we're going to hook onto the end attached to the ball of yarn. Keep a tight tension, hook onto that, and pull it under the loop. And then going over the loop, yarn over, and pull through 2 loops on the hook. This is going to be a single crochet, and the majority of this pattern is going to be made with a variety of single crochet stitches. For round 1, we're going to do 4 single crochets into the center of this loop. So we want to do 4 of those in a row. So there's 1, go under the loop, yarn over, pull through, go over, yarn over, and pull through 2. There's 2, and we're doing 4. So go in, pull through, over, and pull through 2. Try to keep your tension somewhat loose, especially for the beginning of this pattern, because we're only going to have 4 stitches to work into, so you want to have a little bit of flexibility for your stitches so that it's easier to work into them when we come around to it for round 2. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 1. Now we can take this tail end and just pull it nice and tight, and it'll close up the end like that. Okay. So next up, we want to get our stitch marker prepared. I'm going to try something that I don't think I've ever tried before. I'm going to try to go through the center here and pull our stitch marker loop through that to get us prepared, like that. And we're just going to work around this stitch marker as we go for each round to keep track of where the ends of the rounds are. Now later on in this video, I'll be showing you how you can crochet without using a stitch marker at all for this pattern to make it a lot easier to tell where the ends of the rounds are and to make it a lot easier to make without having to like keep track of all your stitches. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 1. For round 2, we're going to be working in a spiral, meaning we don't need to turn around for this entire pattern. We want to just work into the stitches that we made for in the last round. So we're just going to keep going in the same direction that we were going. For round 2, we're going to do a single crochet into our first stitch and then an increase into our next. An increase stitch means that we're going to put 2 single crochets into the same stitch. When we go into each of these stitches, we want to make sure that we're working under both loops. So if you look at the top of your stitches here, you're going to see a V, and we want to work under both of the loops. This would be the front loop only, and this one would be the back loop only, which is necessary for some patterns, but not this one. In this pattern, we're going to want to make sure your crochet hook is under both loops. So we're going to do a single crochet into our first one, which is going to be this one right here, and then an increase into the next. If you have a hard time finding where the first stitch is, find your last stitch, which is the last one that you made, which will be right here where the loop is coming out, and count backwards however many stitches you had in your last round. So our last round had 4, so this is where the loop is coming out. So we would want 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's going to be our first stitch right there. So we'll take our crochet hook, get it into our loop, and we're going to find our first stitch right here, place the hook right under the 2 loops, and then kind of just pry it under. I like to use like a downward pushing motion like that to make sure that I get under both those loops. So for round 2, we want to do a single crochet into our first one. So just pull a loop through and then pull a loop through 2. And then we want to do an increase into the next one. So there's our first stitch. The next one's going to be right here. We want to do an increase, which means 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So we yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through 2, and that's going to be our first single crochet of our increase. For our next single crochet in our increase, you want to go into the same stitch. Look where that stitch is like kind of pulling it out. You see how there's like a little hole there? You want to go into the same spot, yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through 2 for your second single crochet in your first increase. We want to repeat that one more time. We'll do a single crochet, then an increase. And we're going to repeat that again. We'll do a single crochet and then another increase. So single crochet into the next stitch right here. Yarn over, pull through 2. And then our last increase into this last stitch right here, which means 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Because we're doing 2 increase stitches, that means that each increase is going to add 1 additional stitch to the our stitch count. So at the end of round 1, we had 4 single crochets around, but now after doing 2 increases, we should have 6 single crochets around. Okay, and that's going to be the end of round 2. Pull our stitch marker up there. For round 3, this is going to be pretty easy for round 3. We're just going to be doing a single crochet into each stitch around. So we're just going to find our first one right here. And we're just going to do 1 single crochet into every stitch around, and you should have 6 single crochets total. So if you want to count and make sure that you are on the right stitch count, just keep crocheting around and make sure that there's 6 total by the time that you get back to your stitch marker at the end of this round. So that'll be, I think that's 4, yeah. 5 and 6. Okay, now that we're done with those first 3 rounds, it's going to get a lot easier just because we're going to have more room to work around. So in the beginning of this pattern, it just looks like a little knotted mess, but it gets a lot easier as you get going further and further. Now I'm going to pull my stitch marker up just a little bit, and we're going to move on to round 4. For round 4, we're going to start our repeat. This is going to be, we're going to continually repeat 2 rounds, but slightly alter one of the 2 rounds every round, and that's going to slowly increase our stitches out so they get bigger and bigger. And you'll see what I mean as we get further along, but I just wanted to say that now so you can like kind of take note of it. So for round 4, we're going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase stitch. And we're going to repeat that 2 times total. So we're going to do 2 single crochets. We're going to go into the first one right here, going over our stitch marker, pull loop through, pull loop through 2. There's 1 single crochet. Here's the next one. There's our second single crochet. And then we want to do an increase into the next one right here, which means 2 in the same stitch. There's 1 and 2. And then we want to repeat that process 1 more time. So 2 single crochets and then an increase. This is our second repeat. 1, 2, and then an increase into the next, which will be 3 and 4. And this is going to bring you up from 6 stitches to 8 stitches. So you should have 8 stitches by the end of round 4 here. For round 5, we're going to just do a single crochet into each stitch around. So just like the round prior to this, a single crochet into every stitch around. Nice and easy. We'll just pull our stitch marker up, like so, and do a single crochet into every stitch around. 8 stitches total. And this is where you're going to start to see our repeat. You'll definitely see it in the next round. We're going to slowly be doing these 2 rounds over and over again. But every other round, we're going to be doing 1 additional single crochet between increases. So that means, well, let me finish up this round and I'll explain what that means. There's 7. This will be our last stitch, which will be 8. Okay, we're going to pull our stitch marker up here. Okay, so now we are on to our 6th round and our repeating round here, where you're going to start to see our pattern forming. We're going to do our round of increases. Now, in the round prior to the last round, so in round 1, 2, 3, in round 4, we did, I think 4, we did 2 single crochets and then an increase. Well, in this round, and then we did a round of just single crochets. Well, in this round, we're going to do 3 single crochets and then an increase. And then you would just keep repeating that process of doing a round of single crochets after you do a round with increasing. And then the next round up would be 4 single crochets and then an increase. And then a round of single crochets and then 5 single crochets and then an increase, repeated twice each time you do one of those increases rounds. And that's going to be how you slowly get it bigger and bigger. And I'll explain that again after we finish our small hat. But that is the general process that you do to make a super big hat too. This, however, is our last round for our little tiny hat. So this is where I usually like to end it if I'm making a little itty bitty party hat for Amigurumi. So we're going to finish up this round. I'll show you how to customize it, and then I'll show you how to continually get larger and larger in your rounds after that. If you want to skip ahead when we do that part, there will be links in the description to time codes for this video to quickly jump around. Okay, so our next round is 3 single crochets and then an increase. So we're going to go to our next one right here. 1, then the next stitch after that. 2, and 3, and then our increase stitch after that. So that's 2 in the same stitch. 4 and 5. Then we're going to repeat that process one more time. 3 single crochets and then an increase. And this should bring you up from 8 stitches to 10 stitches, which is what you should have at the end of your round here. I always like to end my rounds on a round of increasing. My hats on a round of increasing. So this will be our last increase right here, which brought us up to 10 stitches around. And whenever I make a hat, I want to finish it up on our round of increasing. I don't want to do our next round where it would just be single crochets in each stitch. I want to end up on a round of increasing so that the end of it is a little bit further found out. If I did a round of single crochets after this, it would just be a little straighter. And we're not really looking for a straighter hat. That's kind of going to make it more of like a dunce cap. And we don't really want a dunce cap. We want a party hat. So that's our last round of increasing and the last round for our miniature party hat before we add our details. Now again, I'll be talking about how to make it larger and larger after we do this next part where I show you details. Here we have one that I'm working on that is significantly larger, and I'll talk about how I did that, and then how you can continually be checking around so that you don't need to use stitch counters after that. Okay. But now let's finish up this miniature party hat. To finish up the miniature party hat, all you need to do is do a slip stitch into the next stitch right here. A slip stitch is going into the stitch, yarning over and pulling a loop through as if you're doing a single crochet, but then taking that loop and pulling it through the loop that you already currently have on your crochet hook like that. That's going to make a slip stitch, which is kind of like half of a single crochet. Okay, now you want to have a somewhat long end because we would be using this to sew onto the head of a little burb, for example. We'll go ahead and cut that yarn and pull it through. So we would normally want this end to use to sew onto the head of something. But before we did that, we want to first off pull out the stitch marker. So I'm just going to pull this out, and there we go. Oh, we got a little left over in there, so let's clean that up really quick. And then the next thing I want to do is hide this tail end in. To hide the tail end, we're going to thread it onto our darning needle, just the long tail end that we need for sewing on. And we want to hide it so that it mimics the ends, the other ends here, so that you can't really see where the end is. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in through the back of the next stitch. So not this stitch, this is the stitch that we just worked into. I wanna go into the back of the next one right here, to the back of it like this. And then we wanna go back in through where this loop that you went through with is coming out. So see where it's coming out of this stitch right here? You want to go back in right through there, and then in through the back of a loop along the edge, and then maybe one more somewhere on the inside of the hat. Let's pull that through, and we're going to pull it tight enough where it mimics the top. See, so we want to make it look like one of these ones. So we're just going to pull it enough like that so that it mimics the end there. It's hard to see where the end of the round is. Okay, so that's going to be how you make the base of your miniature hat. Now let's add some details before I explain how to make even a larger hat. So for a miniature hat, the details that you can do are a lot more minuscule. Like you can't really, it's really hard to do like a pom-pom, for example, because making a very tiny pom-pom is really difficult, especially without the right tools. So we're not going to be doing a pom-pom, we're not going to be doing stars. I suppose you could do stars, but instead we're going to just do a stripe and a little tiny ball at the top by making an actual little miniature ball of yarn. So we're going to take our secondary color here, get it ready. And we're going to start by getting a long tail end. Go with like, yeah, that's probably long enough. And then we want to take your yarn, place it into your palm, and just like how you're doing the magic loop, you want to hold it down like so, and we want to wrap around our index and middle finger like 10 times, maybe 8 times. We just want to have like a little bulk of yarn to start working around. Let's do one more. That's probably pretty good. Actually, we'll do one more just to be safe. And then we'll take it off of our fingers and we'll fold it in half like that. And then you want to go around the center of this like this. 1, 2, let's do 3. And then fold this in half and then go around that a few times. Let's go 1, 2. And then you want to just start turning it around as you wrap yarn around it to create a very tiny ball of yarn. I'm gonna have to like kind of squish it so that it's more of a ball and just keep going around. We'll just kind of ignore this tail end a little bit. We're going to need it in a little bit. Let's see, that's probably, actually, yeah, I like that. That's pretty good. Let's do one more around it. And then you want to get a long end and cut it. I'm going to try not to let go of our ball of yarn so that it doesn't come unraveled. And then we want to take this end. Well, first we're going to take our darning needle and I'm going to go straight through the top and come out through wherever this tail end is close. So like probably right there is where we want to come out. So we're going to go straight through the top of it. We're going to go out through somewhere pretty close. And then we're going to take this tail end and thread it on the needle and just pull it all the way through like that. Okay, now you should have a pretty sturdy little ball of yarn that shouldn't come apart because we did that little sewing in thing there. Now we want to take this and we want to sew it onto the top of our miniature hat and then add some stripes along the outside. So to do that, what we want to do is we want to start by going through, and we're going to use this longer tail end first. We want to go through the top and then out through an adjacent stitch, like really anywhere that's nice and close to it. Just like that. And then we want to go around the body of your hat just a few times. 1, 2, let's do like 3. And then we'll come and go ahead and just go through the very bottom of our piece right here, just somewhere along the base of your hat. And that'll create your little like stripes along the outside. but these stripes might come undone. So what we want to do is we want to like hold these stripes down with the other tail end of our yarn. So we want to take this other tail end, thread it on a needle like this, and then we want to go straight through the top and then out through an adjacent stitch that's along this stripe. So we'll go through like right here. And then we want to go around the stripe and go across to another stitch that's adjacent. And we want to just continuously be going around the stripe and just pulling it almost like tight, but not too tight, so it's not like pulling the stripe in. We just want to keep the stripe in place. So we're going to go around this stripe, and we'll go, let's go next to this one right here. So we'll just go down a stitch a little bit. Go around this stripe, and then we'll go across right here. Look along our piece here. Oh, I should have done one on this stripe, so let's go through this one here, and we'll go up to tie it around to this stripe. And I'm basically just like randomly going around making sure that this stripe is held down in a variety of places along the side of it. I'll go through this stripe. And actually this will be the last part. So we'll just go through this stripe because I think it's close enough to where the tail end went through. So wherever you went through with this other tail end, you want to end up close to it, at least like a few stitches away. See how we're only like 3-4 stitches away? That's probably close enough to do a double knot and it not be too like invasive towards the design. Okay, so we want to take this tail end here and we'll pull it a little bit, and then we want to take this other tail end, both yellow ends, and pull the second one just a little bit to tighten everything a little. Not too much, but just a bit to get it in place. And then we want to take these two tail ends and just double knot them on the inside and cut close. So we'll go 1, and 2 for our double knot. We'll cut it nice and close here. And there we go. Now we have our little miniature party hat that we can use to sew onto our tinier amigurumi. And I made it so this ball is just a little loose. I really like it so it's got some give to it. They call this sympathetic motion. It's when something else moves and then the other thing moves with it. So I really like it when that ball has like a little bit of wiggle to it. All right, so that's going to be how you make your small hat. When you sew it on, you want to use these 2 longer red tail ends, or whatever your main color is, to sew it on. You want the longer one to sew on all the stitches along the border, and then this other tail end to go straight through the center of where the hat is and come out through an adjacent stitch, and then you can double knot these 2 ends together to hold the hat onto place. Okay, so that's going to be how you make a little miniature one. Now let's talk about how to make it even bigger. Okay, so like I was saying before, here is our other hat that I've done, where I've done a few more rounds of these increases. And let me talk about exactly what I did here. So the end of our last round for our little hat is about right here, I believe. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it'll be right about here, actually. So the round after your last round, our last round of our little miniature hat was 3 single crochets and then an increase, and so you had 10 single crochets around. And we ended on a round with increases in the round. So the round after that, you would do a round of just single crochets. So that would be just a single crochet into each stitch, that'd be 10. The round after that, you would do another round with increases in it, but there would be 1 additional single crochet between those increased stitches. So for your last round of increases, you did 3 single crochets and then an increase. And then you repeated that twice. That ended up at 10 stitches. But this next round of increases, you want to do 4 single crochets and then an increase. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you would repeat that once, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And you would end up with 12 stitches around. and then you do another round with just single crochets in it. And you keep doing that repeat of doing like slowly increasing in each round to get it bigger and bigger and bigger, and it'll keep going out, funneling out like a little cone, you know. And this is just a nice way to make a cone in general, which could be useful for making like things like pointy elf ears, or like really whatever you want. It's just the best way to make a cone. Now, I want to show you how you can keep doing those rounds without ever needing to use a stitch marker at all. So here I am. I just finished, like, I don't even know which round. I think we have 18 stitches around at this point, and I just finished on a round of increases. Now, the most important part for this pattern is noticing where your increased stitches are. And this is important for amigurumi in general. It's really useful to know exactly what an increased stitch looks like so you can keep track of where you're at without using a stitch marker. So let me show you. So if you look at your pattern here, or stitches here, you're going to be able to see some stitches that are increases and some that are not. This stitch, for example, is a single crochet. This is just a regular single crochet, 1V into the stitch. Now the majority of these stitches are all going to be single crochets. There's a single crochet, there's a single crochet, there's a single crochet. Now here is an increase stitch. And you can tell it's an increase because there's 2 of these V's going into one little hole. This one's got 1 V going into one hole, meaning that's a single crochet, but this one's an increase because it's got 2 going into one spot. Now what's really cool to look at is if you do this, this pattern correctly, your increases are all going to line up together. So you can see, like, here's an increase, then under it is going to be a single crochet, and then under that it's going to be an increase. And so they're all going to line up together. So what's really important here is if you can tell where the increased stitches are, you can easily tell where the ends of the rounds are and where you should do a single crochet and where you should do an increase. So this round that I'm on right now is a round of just single crochet stitches. So we're just going to single crochet all the way around, but we want to still keep track of what stitches we're working into so that we know where to finish our round up. So for example, let's just crochet around, and I'll show you when I get to an increase, how I can tell it's an increase. And we're just single crocheting, doodly doodly doo. We're just making stitches, right? And we just want to keep track while we're going and look at whatever I'm going into. So like this next stitch I'm going into is just a single crochet. Okay, good. That's what we want. We want to go into single crochet. Oh, wait. This next stitch here is an increase stitch, which means there's the next 2 stitches are going to still just be single crochet stitches, but we want to keep track to say, okay, we're going into an increase stitch right now. Boom, there's an increase stitch. That's what we just did a single crochet into an increase stitch. You want to keep track of that because that could be the end of the round. In our case, this is not the end of the round, but it could be. And this is how you can tell. You'll keep going around and see those increase stitches, and if I see another increase stitch as I'm going around around that stitch, that means that it's not the end of the, like, it will be the end of the round. So we're going to keep going around here. We're going to just keep doing our single crochet stitches to find where the next increase is in our pattern. We're just going around. Couple more. Oh, here's our next increase. See, so there's an increase stitch here. Now, when we see this other increase stitch, because we were paying attention, we know that this will be the end of our round. But let's pretend we didn't know this was the end of the round, and we just thought, okay, now we're in the middle of our round. We still need to do our single crochets around. Well, that's not going to be a problem, because when we get to the next part, we're going to see that we're going to do a single crochet into a single crochet stitch and not into an increase stitch, which is not right, which means we need to do another single crochet into that same stitch to make it into our next increase stitch. Does that make sense? I think that kind of makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions about this in the comments, but let's keep going, and I'll try to explain it as best as I can as I continue going here. And yeah, I'm trying to do the best I can to explain this in the best way possible, but I'm kind of just going off the cuff here. Okay, so we want to just keep going around, and let's pretend we think that this is the center of our round. We don't know that that's the end of our round. So we're just going to keep going around here And as I'm going, I'm paying attention to not only the stitch that I'm working into, but now I'm paying attention to that stitch and the stitch under that stitch. Because if I see that either one of those is an increase, that means that I know I'm in the halfway point. So this next stitch, I look down, that's a single crochet. But then I look down further, that's an increase, which means that there should be another increase right here. That's directly above it. So if you see an increase in the round below the round you're currently working on, in the same stitch that you're working into, that means that you should put another increase right here. So this stitch right here should be an increase stitch. There should be two in the same spot. And there you go. Now I know that I put an increase into the right spot because it lines up with the increases down. And again, we're looking at the increases. We see two V's going into one stitch. And then this one's just a regular single crochet. There's just one V going into one stitch. Go down a couple. It's really important, and this is something that comes a lot with practice, so keep your stitch marker present if you're a beginner, and just keep a track of this. But as you go, as you make more and more things, keep track of where your increased stitches are, because it really is helpful for knowing how to crochet without a stitch marker at all. We're just going to keep going around here and find our last stitch, our last increased stitch. And again, I'm going really quick here, but I'm looking at the stitch that I'm working into. I'm working at the stitch under that stitch at the same time. So this next stitch right here, that I'm working into currently, should be an increase stitch. I can tell because there's an increase right below it right here. So that means that this stitch right here is our final increase stitch. There's our last increase. Okay, so I think this is a pretty good size for our next party hat that we're making. But this time I want to add some other details to it. Something a little bit closer to the stripes along this larger party hat. By the way, this large party hat is made by continually doing that over and over and over again. I think at the end of this round, I had like 40, maybe 50 stitches around, just increasing up 2 stitches every other round to just slowly get there. And eventually I got to this size. Okay, so we're on to, now we want to add some stripes. So what I like to do for our thicker stripes is, well, the first thing we can do is we can just finish up this stitch with a slip stitch like we did for our other hat. So we're just going to do a slip stitch into the next one right here, like that. We can cut the yarn. Again, I'll leave a long end just in case I end up deciding that I want to sew this onto the head of something. The long end like that. Thread the tail end. So we're just going to do a hidden end like we did for our small hat here, and go into the back of the next stitch. So this next stitch right here, we want to go into the back of it, like that, and then down through where it's coming out right here, and then in through the back of a few stitches along the inside, just to like hide this end in so it doesn't come apart. So just a few stitches like that. Pull it through. There we go. Okay, so now we have our, like, the cone of our party hat done. Now we want to add stripes using slip stitches around so that the stripes are a little bit thicker than our simple little lines for our small hat here. So we want to do a little thicker, a little bit more sturdy stripes. So we're going to grab our yellow yarn, or whatever you are using for your secondary color. We're going to start with a slip knot. So you're going to take your yellow yarn, make a loop over itself, and then take that loop and fold that over itself like so. And then take the inside, it should look like a pretzel kind of thing here. Take the inside loop right here and pull it through. This will make a slip knot so that when you pull this end, nothing happens, but when you pull this end, it tightens the loop. Okay, so we're going to take that off our crochet hook here, but now we have a little tiny slip knot. That's important. So now we want to take our crochet hook, go into the stitch where we did our last little slip stitch. Let's go like let's say like right here, and just pull that slip knot through that stitch like that. Now what we want to do is go in through the next stitch along the border right here, take this other end and slip stitch. Okay, we're just going to keep doing that all the way around. So we're going to go into the next stitch right here, take our end that's attached to the ball, yarn over, and slip stitch. You can work around this tail end if you want to hide the end in, but it's not really too necessary, as we can hide this end in later, or we can double knot it to the other end of our yellow yarn once we're done with our stripes. So we're just going to keep doing these slip stitches into both loops along the border here to create a border of yellow stitches. And then when we get to the end of this round, I'm going to show you how to go up and keep doing this around in a spiral so that it keeps getting, you keep adding more and more stripes. Now I have a very specific way that I did this on my long hat, and at first I was a little skeptical about it, but after I'd made it, I really liked, I actually ended up really liking the design that I did to keep the stripe continuously going. So I'm going to show you how to do that to see if that's something you'd be interested in as well. So we're coming along to the end of our stitches here. Let's go into this one here, and then now we're at the end of our round here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go in through the same stitch that I started in right here and do another slip stitch. And then I want to go up around right here and do a slip stitch like that. And then I want to go up another round. So I want to go one more round up and do a slip stitch. Now we could just do a stripe into this round. You know, I could have just done one stitch up and then done slip stitches around the whole border, and that would make these stripes really close together to each other, which might look really cool. But I want my stripes to be a little bit further separated. Okay, so I want my stripes looking more like this. And you can kind of see how the rounds in between the stripes, you could do a round of stripes in between each one, and it would be very stripy. Now that is a process. It's a lot of work to do that many slip stitches, especially working on the inside. So I kind of like to spread it out because it's a little bit easier. And I just think aesthetically it looks a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to do 2 rounds up, which is what I just did. Did our slip stitches. I'm trying to get this tail end out of the way. We did our slip stitches a couple rounds up. And we're just going to keep going around. Now, as I'm going, I've got my finger all the way in as close as I can to where that slip stitch is. And then I'm just going to keep going around horizontally. Instead of going up rounds, I'm going to start going to the left, or whatever way you are normally crocheting. We're just going to keep doing our slip stitches around, going through these stitches, through the stitch, yarning over with the end attached to the ball of yarn, pulling through. And this gets gradually more difficult as you get further along with the hat. So as I get further into the hat, it's going to be harder and harder for me to get my hand into the hat so that I can hold the yarn in place to grab for a slip stitch. Now you can mitigate this by going straight up all the way through the top like that, and then yarning over and then pulling it in. But it can be difficult. It definitely can be. It's easier just to like get as close as you can to it on the inside. Okay, so now we are at just about the end of our round, and you're going to see that it's going to line up. We're going to get to wherever the end of that round is, and we're going to do a slip stitch into the same stitch, or we can just start going like we could just start going up from here. In fact, you know what? Let's do that. Let's go one stitch over. Let's get into this one right here. Redo this slip stitch. Let's see what I did on this long one. I think I stopped. Yeah. So see what I did for this one is I gave it a little bit of space in between each of the rounds instead of going straight to it and then going up, straight to it, then going up. I tried to give a little space in between them so they kind of go up. And this is what I really like. This is the design that I ended up really digging this look. It kind of looked like a road or something. It just made it look so interesting to me. So that's what we're going to replicate here. So a few stitches before the end of the round. Now we want to start going up. We want to go up a few rounds. 1. Let's go up. I think we need 3 total. 2. Let's see. Yeah, we need one more round up. go right here, get our yarn, and 3, and then we're going to just start going back around it. So I went up a few rounds, and then now I'm going to start just going around and keeping this stripe going. Now this is why I don't really like using this technique to do stripes all the way up the hat, because it just gets more and more difficult every round you go. But you totally can. Like it's not like impossible. It's just more easy to do a few rounds of these and then maybe do a little bit of detail along the hat in different ways. Or you could try doing stripes vertically instead. Instead of doing horizontal stripes like this, maybe you could do stripes that go up and then down, up, down, up, down, make zigzags or something. There's so many different ways you can customize this. But this is just one of them. So you see how our stripes are starting to form. Okay, so that's going to be how to add stripes. I'm going to go ahead and finish up these stripes right now. Let's do one more slip stitch. I'm going to get to the very end where the stripes connect, like this. I'm just going to connect the stripes. I think that's probably good for me. I'm only going to do 3 stripes, and then I'll cut the yarn and pull it all the way through. And then we can take this end, add it to our darning needle here, and then we're going to go through the inside right here, like that. And then with this other tail end here, we can either just double knot these two together, or we can hide the ends into the inside of the stitches here. We can hide these ends in instead of doing double knots. Actually, let's at least get it a little closer. So I'm just going to go in through the back of some of these stitches here, just kind of hiding it along, getting it a little bit closer to our other end so that it's just a few stitches away, and then double knotting together. Do a double knot here. 1, and there's 2. Okay. All right, so there's a double knot. Now the next thing I want to show you is how to make a pom-pom for the top of your party hat if you want to add a little pom-pom at the top. Now this can be a little bit tricky, but it's kind of fun to know how to do pom-poms without an actual pom-pom maker. It is a lot easier to make pom-poms if you have a pom-pom maker. They basically look like little plastic things that you like fold open and then you wind around the plastic things. I don't currently have one with me. Actually, wait, you know what? Maybe I do. Let me look real quick. Okay, so I couldn't find my little itty bitty pom-pom maker, which would be nice, but that's okay. I did find a larger pom-pom maker that shows you what they look like if you want to find them in stores. They basically look like this. You pull these open, and then you wind around these pom-pom makers, and you close them. You wind around this one and close it, and then you go around the inside here and you pull tight, and then you cut it along the, or actually you cut it and then you pull it. You do a stripe and pull it tight. That's how these little pom-pom makers work, but we're going to do it without that at all. We're only going to be using our fingers for these pom-poms, which is a little bit more difficult, but you know what? Well, I don't know if it's necessarily more difficult, but it is a little bit more crafty, which I like. So what you want to do for that is you want to take your fingers, just like how we did the little mini ball for the top. You want to take your index fingers, hold it down with the, like, do a little peace sign, and put your thumb in between it with your yarn held down in between. And keep your thumb in between your index fingers and just start going around your index fingers a bunch. Like go... like really as many times as you want. The more times you do this, the thicker your pom-pom will be. So we're going to go around like, don't hurt your hands, but that's probably pretty good. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so then after you've done that, what you want to do is you want to take your crochet hook and go in through the gap between your hands there and take your the yarn, wrap it around the crochet hook and hook it and pull it through your fingers. And then take this end, go around the center and then do it again. Like that. You can do this a couple times if you want. You could do it like another time. But when you go through, you want to pull it really tight. And then with this end, we're going to try to do the same thing the other way around. So we're going to go through, around that way, and around this way. And basically what we're trying to do is create a knot to pull these loops really tight. So like this, just like that. Okay, and then we want to take these two ends. We can actually pull it off our fingers now. Just be very, very careful as you pull it off your fingers, not to have it unravel. And then you want to take these two ends and double knot them really tightly. So we'll go one, like that. Pull it nice and tight. I'll do it again. Pulling it nice and tight. Okay, so now you have this weird little loopy thing, right? Make sure to keep these two ends intact and tracked, because we do not want to accidentally cut these, but we do want to cut all these loops on the inside. So the easiest thing here is to use maybe a better pair of scissors than the ones I'm about to use, but something a little bit bigger, and we want to cut all these loops along in the inside. So we want to find the inside of the loops here, just cut them all. And the double knotting there on the with these two end loops should keep all of these intact and not like loose and like flying around. But you want to make sure that you cut all the loops like that. You're gonna have a really silly looking pom-pom in a second. We're gonna trim it down. Okay, keep going down. Let's see, make sure I didn't miss any loops. Oh, got a couple there I missed. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now we have like a pretty messy pom-pom. This would work, I suppose, but we want to trim it down. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take our scissors here, and we're just going to trim I like to trim the bottom of it first. And we just want to kind of like hedge trim this so that it looks more like a circle. So I start by trimming the bottom of it a bit, and then I trim up the sides. I try to make sure all the ends are nice and trimmed there. Just keep trimming up the sides here, like that. Almost done. Just keep, and then like just fuzz, like, you know, knock it around a bit. Find any like pieces that are longer than they should be to trim, like that. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Okay, so now we have this little bitty pom-pom, and the more that you like toss it, the more you mess it about, the more that the threads are gonna get like split and make it look more and more pom-pommy. So you can see it's getting more pom-pommy. See all these little fuzzies flying around. Looks like we got a couple long pieces right there that I just want to trim up. But there we go. Okay, so now we have this little pom-pom, and we could take this and just sew it onto the top of our party hat here. Let's go ahead and push those little fuzzies out of the way. Go ahead, and we can use those for stuffing later, so I'm going to put that aside with my stuffing, and I can use that. But we can take these two long ends here and sew it into our hat. Nice and easy, actually. It's really not too tough to do. You just want to take one of the ends here, sew it in through the top of your hat. And you can just come out through the center, but actually what's even easier is you can come out through an adjacent stitch. You can come out through somewhere nice and close like that. And then take this other end, which is way longer than we needed it. Thread that end on our needle. And we can come down through an adjacent stitch from that top one. So like, let's go like right here maybe, and come out through where you came out with that other loop here, like that. Pull it nice and tight. Now you want to pull both of these ends really tight and double knot this nice and tight. So just one. Just try not to break your yarn, but we want to make sure it's really tight on there. 2. Then we can cut it really nice and close like that. Then take our darning needle and push that little knot back into the piece there. And then there we go. We have a little tiny party hat with a little tiny pom-pom. So the last things that you could do is we could add little stars to it. I have a full video where I explain how to make little miniature stars, which are really useful for sewing onto this. So I'll link that right here or at the end of this video. But yeah, you could add little dots, you could add stars, you could do horizontal stripes, really whatever you want to make another little party hat. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video and please like it down below, subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to help support this channel, consider becoming a Club Crochet member. Members get early access to future videos, just like this one. They get access to an exclusive content. I've got so many different patterns on the website for Club Crochet members, including there's this new long turkey pattern with this pilgrim hat.